Hello, welcome. Sit down, get comfortable, take a seat. So I've been looking over your intake form here, and I see that you want to work on overcoming fear. You feel like fear has been holding you back in life. Well, it's a very common goal, so you're not alone there. Why don't you tell me a little bit more details about how that specifically is affecting you? Okay, so if I hear what you're saying, you just feel like a little bit stuck right now, like you're running in place and you're not making the types of progress that you would like to be making. All right. What I noticed you saying is you were talking about, you want to destroy your fear, but I think you're looking at it from the wrong perspective, because it's not about eliminating fear. It's not about eliminating anger. It's about integrating those parts of us into our personality. I'm going to kind of like explain what I mean by that. So your fears, they're these subconscious defense mechanisms that you have put into place based on situations that you encountered when you were a child, when you were young, when you're growing up. There's systems that are put in place designed to protect you, to keep you safe. So they're coming from a good place. They're not looking to hurt you. They're not evil. Their intentions are good. Now you can kind of think of fear as like the family guard dog. It's there. It's in front of your house. It's keeping watch. And whenever someone tries to get in, its instinct is to keep them away, to attack, to prevent. So the problem with that, with a guard dog, is they're not able to differentiate between good opportunities and bad opportunities that we're trying to keep out. It's just keeping everything out. Just kind of like understand what I'm saying there. So if you had a guard dog that was preventing your mail from being delivered, was preventing your friends from coming over, as well as preventing, bad guys from getting into your house, there's an imbalance there that's going to create problems, in your living situation, because the things that you want to attract, the things that you want to come into your life, aren't able to. So I'm sure you're aware that the solution would not be to kill the guard dog. The guard dog is just doing its job. It's just trying to keep you safe. Your job is to be in control of the situation and to create a system that's going to allow the good to come in while still keeping the bad at bay. So we're not killing fear. We're just becoming the boss of fear, as opposed to fear being the boss of us. So you kind of like understand that part. Okay, good. Because that's a really big distinction to start off with, just right out of the gate. All right, so I'm glad that you get that. So now let's move on to like what some of your specific fears are that you feel are holding you back right now. Okay. Can you explain that one a little bit more detail? All right. That's a very, very common way to feel about that. All right, so we're gonna talk about that next. Thank you for being like so open and transparent. It's obvious that you've really put a lot of time and effort into thinking these things through. You're definitely on on the right path. We're just gonna help clear the way a little bit for you, all right? Okay. Okay, so in that specific example that you just gave me, where you feel fear oftentimes come up, instead of trying to just ignore or suppress or let it completely, become the boss and have you just run away from the situation, I want you to try to separate yourself from that emotion. So, it really helps if you start with meditation, like 15 minutes every morning, because that's just a technique where you're going to get to differentiate between yourself, your true self, and all these thoughts that are just sort of like echoes that you've heard, that have been instilled in you through parents and friends and teachers and whatnot, that you've adopted as your own voice, but isn't really your true, authentic voice. So what I want you to do when you feel the fear emotion coming on is to differentiate yourself from it. You're the sky, the fear is the cloud that is passing through it, and you're going to acknowledge it, and you're going to say, I see you, fear. What is it that you're trying to tell me? And right in that moment, you have taken a position of authority. You are taking the leadership role in your own thoughts, in your own mind. You're not the employee with fear being your boss, with fear telling you what you're going to do next. Fear is your employee. It's coming to you and it's letting you know, these are the things that I've observed, these are the things I've witnessed, these are my concerns, and you as the boss of fear, I'm going to say, thank you for bringing those to my attention. I appreciate your concerns, and you are going to let fear know, but I'm deciding to do that anyways. Obviously not every single time, but you're going to listen to what fear has to say, and then you, as the boss, you're going to make the conscious decision whether or not you're going to take those things into consideration and decide to proceed, or if you're going to come to the conclusion that it's not the right time to proceed. Kind of understand the difference there. Fear's not up here. Fear's down here. Fear's talking to you. You are making the decision, not the other way around. But you don't disrespect it. You don't suppress it. You don't ignore that feeling. You see it. You listen to it. And then you make the conscious decision what course of action you are going to take, not the emotion that's separate from you. The emotion is not what is going to decide your course of action. Does that make sense? Okay, good. All right, so let's keep going. Just want to write one quick note. So what I want you to do now is I want you to think of the last time that you felt this sort of like wave of inspiration, this wave of excitement come over you for something that you wanted to pursue, something that you wanted to try, that you really felt authentically excited about, but then fear came in and snuffed that idea out. So take your time, think about something. It could be a job opportunity, it could be approaching someone that you wanted to talk to, and you had this instinctual wave of inspiration to do it, but then those outside voices appeared, 10 seconds after the inspiration that talked you out of taking action. Okay. How long ago was that? I want to talk a little bit about how to prevent that from happening next time you get one of those waves of, like inspiration, because that's actually your true voice speaking to you, trying to encourage you to create, to be on the right path. And then those lower emotions, they talked you out of pursuing what was actually the path your inner self really wanted to be on. So we're going to talk about how to prevent that from happening next time. All right. So in the example you gave, you felt that wave of excitement, and then all of a sudden the guard dog appeared and starts barking. And like we were saying before, it means well. It's just not meant to be the one that's controlling the show. So we're going to listen to what that guard dog said to you in that moment, and then we're going to see what course of action you think you should have taken after listening to those concerns. So what was, in that specific example, what was fear trying to say to you when you came up with that emotion? So it was making you feel like you're not ready for that yet. It's very common fear, and it sounds rational, and that's why it ends up preventing so many people from taking the next step, because you hear, oh no, you're not ready for that yet, now's not the right time. And that sounds like really reasonable, rational advice. So lots of times people will listen to that fear, and then years and years go by and they're still standing in the exact same place, because fear wants to keep you comfortable and safe. Fear's not looking out for you to grow and thrive. So it's doing its job. You just can't have it be the boss. Exactly. Just like you said, fear can either be your ally or it can be your enemy. And you want to think of it as a consultant, as an advisor. You just don't, you don't want it controlling you. So it's not about dismantling, it's not about destroying the fear, it's just about integrating. So an annoying thing that our brain does that we have to become conscious of is our brain, when you're presented with a fear, it's going to want to start creating just this whole assortment of worst case scenarios. And, then we're going to say no to those worst case scenarios. And there was this infinite number of paths that lay out before us. And now we've created this hypothetical worst case scenario in our head. And we've said no to walking on that infinite array of paths based on something that's not grounded in any truth. And when you start to become, a conscious observer of that, you're already putting yourself more in the driver's seat, because you're not reacting to illusions anymore. You're aware of the fact that you've created that worst case scenario in your mind, and you've let that imaginary situation stop you from taking a step forward. Because there's never going to be an exact right time. The right time is when the inspiration hits you. If you think about so many people that have accomplished extraordinary things in life, like the Wright brothers, that invented the first airplane, they didn't have any backing. They didn't even really have any experience in that. They, were were familiar with bicycles, and they just kept trying through action and error and then course correction to eventually achieve their goal. Same thing with Thomas Edison. He didn't just sit there and just keep thinking, like, one day I'd really like to invent something, but I'm not ready now. Now's not the time. No, he tried, and probably it was like thousands of attempts of failures before coming up with, the creation of the light bulb. When we think about Steve Jobs, Mark Zuckerberg, these are people that started extremely successful companies, just like, while they're still in college or in their parents' garage. They didn't wait and say, I'm not exactly in the place I need to be right now. They had the inspiration. They took that first step, and then things started to fall into place because they were in the path of being the creator of their life. And that just kind of tends to happen. Like, think about it like this. Think about it like when you were learning how to drive. So what if when you were learning how to drive, you never got behind the wheel of the car? You just said, I'm just going to read everything there is to know about cars. I'm just going to keep reading. I'm going to watch other people drive cars. But I'm not going to drive one myself. I'm not ready to drive myself. You could study as much as you wanted, know every single detail on paper, the ins and the outs about how to drive a car. But it's not until you get behind the wheel and you make some mistakes and you course correct that it starts to become a skill. You can't think your way into being the best version of yourself. It takes taking action. You get that? Yeah, it's an important distinction. If you were driving at night, it's super dark out, you wouldn't be looking out at the journey ahead and thinking, I need to see from where I'm standing now my destination. No. All you need to see is that, 200, 300 feet in front of you, that the headlights are illuminating. And then with each step that you take in that direction, you see more of what's ahead. But if you just stood there, as soon as you got in the car and sat and thought, well, I can't see the end destination, I guess I can't start, you would never get anywhere. Does that kind of make sense? Yeah, I don't know. I feel like it helps to think about things sort of like in metaphors or analogies, because sometimes images can actually help you grasp things that words kind of can't, Because the universe doesn't really think in words. The universe thinks in images, if that makes sense. Like your dreams and your inspirations, lots of times those don't come in words. They come in visions. Sometimes trying to communicate on a level where you're speaking through imagery makes more sense than just words. So all this time thus far, you've been letting your subconscious fears dictate your reality. Think about how your life is going to become when you start making these decisions consciously. Think about how your life is going to change when you are actually back in the driver's seat where you belong, making these decisions, not letting life and fear and the echoes from your past prevent you from being on the path that you're meant to be on, because you know the path that you're meant to be on. You might have forgotten it, but deep down you do know the path that you're meant to be on, and you want to be on that path. And the interesting thing is, you'll feel in your gut, that part of yourself that's deep down inside yourself, you'll feel in your gut when you're getting further from your path and we're getting closer to it. It's a feeling that can't really be put into words, but I know that you know what I'm talking about, when you're living in accordance to your truth as opposed to when you're straying from it. There's just this inner feeling of alignment that you feel when you know you're walking in the direction that you're meant to be walking. And there's a feeling that you feel when you know you just made a decision that took you further off course. It's just like, it's just this feeling that overcomes you. And I think it's your spirit trying to let you know, hey, that's not the right course. You need to come back. At any time, like, we let sort of like the lower, less evolved parts of ourselves get in the driver's seat, and we say something, and as soon as it comes out of our mouth, we're like, oh, that didn't feel right. Or we do something, and as soon as we do it, we're like, oh, that didn't feel right. Like, listen to that feeling. It's trying to bring you back. Just want to go over something else that I think is important that we just touched on. Hold on, I'm just going to write a little note here. Yeah, definitely. That's a good point. I'm glad that you're making those connections already. It's awesome. I can see that, like, you're really just processing this. You're meant to hear this message right now. I can tell, maybe if you had come in here a year ago, you wouldn't have been ready, but like, you were definitely meant to hear this. You're definitely meant to hear this message right in this moment. I can tell, like, you're ready for change. I can see it in your eyes. All right. So let's just get back to where we were about choosing consciously. Unfortunately, though, this isn't like a one-time battle. This is a battle that's going to exist within you, forever, but it's going to become a little bit easier for you. The lower parts of you are always going to be at odds with your higher self. And there's always going to be this battle of dominance. Who's telling who what to do? So, fear has one primary job. And fear's primary job is to keep you safe and to keep you exactly where you are within that little bubble. Because fear doesn't care if you're happy. Fear only cares about keeping you safe. That's fear's only job. Fear's not thinking, is this going to create the best version of them? Is this going to project them into a higher version of themselves? No, fear's just doing its job, and its job is to keep you safe. So, the voice of fear, it might feel like it's your true voice. It's going to sound like you, but it's not actually you. It's this voice that's been created by the world from every doubt, every limitation, every, person that made you feel like you weren't good enough, that you didn't measure up, a teacher that made you feel like you weren't smart enough, a friend that killed your dream when you spoke of something that you wanted to do because their own fear made them jealous of whatever you were thinking about achieving. And that's going to be something that does happen a lot. So when you do have a passion, something that comes to you, something that you're excited about, don't share it immediately, Harness that within yourself, because it's a very delicate little seed at that point. Think about like a farmer. If a farmer took a seed and buried it in the ground, and it knew it was going to grow into this, let's just say an oak tree. So, someone planted a seed in the ground and they knew it was going to grow into an oak tree. They wouldn't keep digging up the seed and showing it to people while it's still in the process of becoming, and saying, oh, this is going to be an oak tree one day, because people are going to look at that and be like, yeah, sure it is, buddy. Good luck with that. And that's, in that stage, while the dream is still very fragile, hearing things like that can crush it. So you just keep it in the ground, keep it to yourself, and just be taking those steps in the beginning without having to speak about them. Words can lots of times really shut doors for you if someone says the wrong thing to you in that early stage while you're still building, So just kind of follow your passion internally at first. Take those first steps without discussing it. Because deep down, I know that that you're capable of a lot more than your inner critic wants to admit. It wants to keep you exactly where you are right now. But you know that you're destined for more than that. And so you feel at odds with yourself. And like I said, it's not about suppressing the fear. It's not about ignoring the fear. It's not thinking you can kill the fear off. It's about acknowledging the fear, listening to what it has to say, but knowing that you are in the position of power to make that final executive decision. And choose the path that you know in your heart that you're meant to be on. And not keep waiting for someday, next week, next year, to make that first step. You make that first step right now. And when you take that first step is then going to create this snowball effect where now you're bringing into your orbit, different people, different situations. Things are going to start coming towards you that you, would never have had come into your orbit if you had not taken that first step. The universe has a way of rewarding action. If you keep waiting for that perfect moment, the goalpost is just going to continually keep moving, 10 feet ahead of you. It's never going to be the perfect moment, Control is the enemy of progress. The more we keep thinking, I'm going to control this situation, I'm going to get everything aligned exactly, perfectly before I take that first step. You are never going to have everything aligned exactly, perfectly. There's always going to be some new thing that needs, to be solved before your, fear allows you to take that next step forward. It's always going to convince you you're one item short from stepping forward. Because fear-based living is all about avoidance. And we want to live as the creator. We do not want to live as the critic. So when you live in fear mode, you're shutting down all your creative forces. Fear wants to keep you living in worst case scenarios. It doesn't want you to be the creator in purpose-driven living. Purpose-driven living is all about growth, creation, moving forward. Fear is all about staying stagnant, staying safe, staying in a position where nothing happens. what I want you to do right now is I want you to think, if you knew you wouldn't fail, say like somehow you could ask the universe and it was guaranteed, you knew that you would not fail, what path would you choose for yourself? And I want you to start visualizing that right now and explaining that to me in great detail, all right? Close your eyes if you want to. Think about if you knew there was a guarantee. You know, God came down and said, what you choose right now will be yours. You just need to describe it as vividly as possible. Start telling me right now what that life looks like to you. Really picture yourself in it. Picture yourself walking in that life. Keep describing that to me. Be as descriptive as possible. That's beautiful. What if I told you that life could be yours? If you claim it. What if I told you that everything that you've encountered thus far has been preparing you for this moment where you realize the difference between living in fear and living consciously? Every setback, every obstacle, every heartbreak, every failure has created who you are and has made you stronger, made you more cautious, has created healthy boundaries. It's taught you to trust your instincts. And you take all those hard lessons, you take all that heartbreak, you take all of the things that have hurt you, and you use that as your ally in conjunction with your spirit that's striving to create, to move forward. And you take that first step because you know the direction that you want to go in, and it's not going to be easy. There's going to be more hurdles. There's going to be, more obstacles along the way, and you'll face them one by one as they come. Not going to imagine them. You're going to face them as they arise in front of you, and just always remember that calm seas don't make for skilled sailors. It's not about being perfect. It's about being authentic. It's about accepting all parts of ourselves, the good, the bad, the ugly, all of it, into an integrated whole where we listen and respect all parts of ourselves and then make our decisions based on the totality of all those different voices. And we hear them, we process them, and we respect them, and then we make the choice that we know is our destiny. You deserve your dreams. You are worthy of what you desire. People always want clarity before they commit to something, but clarity doesn't come until you commit to a path and you take that first step, and then you just course correct as you go. You're not going to think yourself into the perfect line of action. Like anyone that's ever done a house remodel or some type of demolition knows that you can look at a project and you think, okay, this is exactly how this is going to go down. But it's not until you get your hands dirty that you realize, oh, all right, this isn't exactly what I thought I was getting into. You have to dive into it, get into it before you really start figuring out the true course corrections of what needs to be done. You're not going to think it into existence. You have to be the act of becoming. Do you want to keep choosing the path of waiting, or do you want to choose the path of becoming, of building, of creation? Your next choice determines your next reality. Your next action determines your next experience. The power is in your hands. I think that we covered a lot of ground today. I'm going to give you this book to take home with you. I think it'll, really go over a lot of the points that I was talking about today. Just kind of help you on the path of becoming. There's so many things in life that unfortunately aren't taught. And oftentimes, we go through life and it feels like we're playing a board game where nobody ever explained the rules to us. This can kind of help you feel like you're playing the game with knowing the rules. So why don't we leave it there for today? You can read the book, and it's not big, it's thin. And we can discuss it at our next meeting. But I'm proud of the progress that we've made today. I look forward to seeing you in the next session. So I want your homework this week to be aware of the next time fear arises. And what's kind of interesting is now you might almost be slightly excited for that emotion, fear, to arise, because now you have this whole new arsenal that you get to face it with, and you get to see how you're going to interact with that fear, the dialogue that you're going to have. And then I want you to tell me the decision that you ended up making once you had that inner dialogue with fear. And then we'll talk about that next time. But yeah, when you start looking at these feelings and these obstacles and these negative emotions from a different light, the things that used to threaten us now become our teachers, and you're looking at them from a completely new perspective. You're not looking at fear now as the thing that's trying to destroy you. You're looking at fear as your teacher. What can you learn from it, and how can you choose differently than you did in the past? So I'm excited to hear, what happens the next time you have to stand face to face with fear and look it in the eye and have that dialogue. I believe in you, and I look forward to hearing what you decide.